Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the advisory map here, warning watch and advisory map, got a winter storm warning out for the Susitna Valley beginning late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night for 8 to 12 inches of snow expected to fall during the evening tomorrow. And winter weather advisories are out for the northern Cook Inlet area. In the case of Anchorage, looking for 3 to 6 inches of snow, again starting late tomorrow afternoon and in the evening. And in the case of Palmer, Wasilla, looking for 4 to 8 inches of snow to fall up there again. Probably most of that would come in tomorrow evening. Up to the north here, we've got high wind watches out for the entire stretch of the Alaska Range up there for wind gusts are actually starting tomorrow and tomorrow night for winds possibly gusting through the passes as high as 70 miles per hour. And out west, we've got a high surf advisory here for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, Nunivak Island, for possible minor beach erosion starting tomorrow afternoon, continuing through tomorrow night. And then there are the continuation of the coastal flood watches here for the Yukon Delta coast, eastern Norton Sound, and the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula. And the heaviest areas where the heaviest surge will probably be from the just east of Nome over toward Norton Bay, where the storm surge could be 8 to 9 feet. Moving on to the satellite imagery, you can see a lot of cold air coming out of the Russian Far East here across the Sea of Okhotsk and into the Northwest Pacific, the leading line of the Arctic air right through there. Low pressure developing here over the far western Bering Sea, and the front associated with that past Shimia now and pushing into the eastern or the central Aleutians, where winds were quite strong today, and a lot of cloudiness spreading up toward the southwest coast, also northward with the cirrus reaching St. Lawrence Island this afternoon. And looks like another little bit of a wave developing down in this area along the frontal boundary. Otherwise, for the eastern zone or the eastern satellite imagery here, you can see clouds and showers here moving in along the southeast coast up to the eastern Gulf Coast. Some showers all the way back to the North Gulf Coast here, but mostly south of Cordova, clearing out over Prince William Sound. Yakutat still picked up about 1.25 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. Juneau having about 1/2 inch of rain. Clearing out in Bristol Bay behind a weakening trough here that brought snow in over the southwest interior. Areas of light snow kind of dissipating into some scattered snow showers this afternoon, and the clear skies here over the southern Susitna Valley down across Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula areas into Prince William Sound. Some pretty good sunshine today, but areas of snow and clouds from the northern Susitna Valley up into the interior, extending back to the Arctic coast. And then you can see the huge cloud shield here in advance of the front, which is back in this area, spreading northeastward with the, on the chart today, the rain area back toward Atka and Adak, and pretty strong winds in advance of this system. Winds gusting just within the last couple hours at Adak up to 78 miles per hour with wind and rain spreading up to the Pribilof Islands, seeing winds gust 25 to 40 miles an hour there in the Pribilofs this afternoon. and then this precipitation sneaking over to the Alaska Peninsula with just the middle high clouds here approaching the southwest coast. Here's that trough and the scattered snow showers this afternoon. That moved through Bristol Bay, followed by clearing this afternoon. And then the gusty winds diminishing during the afternoon here across Kodiak Island, and also some gusty winds up across the Kenai Peninsula. Seward seeing gusts to 35 miles an hour out of the north, while Whittier had gusts to 50 miles an hour there out of the west. And some areas of light snow here over the eastern Copper River Basin up toward Tok and Northway, and then all the showers here along the southeast coast, and areas of snow again from the northern Susitna Valley up into the middle Tanana Valley, the central interior, all of the upper Yukon Valley. Quite an extensive area of light snow, picking up anywhere from 1 to 2 inches in some locations, extending back up to Barrow and then down to the Noatak Valley areas, and then some scattered snow showers over Norton Sound and isolated snow showers over the Seward Peninsula. Looking at the forecast graphic for tonight, we'll see this low complex out here kind of consolidates into one center and really begins to deepen down to 965 millibars there, and the front driving right up to the southwest coast. So rain and wind spreading into Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula areas, with even stronger winds here over the Kuskokwim and Yukon Delta areas, with snow changing or mixing with rain later tonight, and then increasing wind and a chance of snow there for Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula areas, and St. Lawrence Island, and then showery conditions back to the west, another colder air here coming into the western Aleutians, so that'll probably drop the snow levels down to sea level out in that area. Up to the north here, the light snow persists there over the north slope to the western Arctic coast. Otherwise clear and cold with diminishing winds here over southern Alaska. Really from the Alaska Range eastward will be the coldest. Kenai Peninsula up into the Copper River Basin. Lows down into the teens tonight with showers continuing. This trough still off the coast of the Panhandle there. So numerous showers continuing up in that area. And then looking ahead to tomorrow, we'll see that trough basically moves through, but enough of an upper level weakness going on here to keep some scattered showers in over the southeast coast, but a lot more isolated than they have been. Possible clearing down in that area as well. Otherwise, the big storm raging out here over the northern Bering Sea down to 952 millibars. And again, that southwest flow pushing that storm surge into the Yukon Delta coast and then on up into the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula tomorrow. Front driving eastward here with probably rain with a big surge of warm air from the south into the Bristol Bay area and possibly into the Kuskokwim Valley. Definitely kind of a mixed condition possible here approaching the Alaska Range, with rain spreading up to the southern Kenai Peninsula into Kodiak Island, and then tightening gradient here, higher pressure to the west and the approach of the front. Looking for winds through Turnagain Arm and the higher elevations of Anchorage to be 35 to 50 miles per hour. Otherwise, again, the high wind warning or the high wind watch out for the Alaska Range, but should be a pretty nice day there up over the eastern interior from the Copper River Basin. Downsloping flow off the Brooks Range could result in some clearing skies there up over the North Slope and the Arctic coastal areas. Otherwise, strong winds, in fact, winds back here on the back side of the system running 60 to 70 knots tomorrow out of the northwest, and that's going to drive that cold air down into the Bering Sea. So mixed rain and snow showers through the Pribilofs. And then on Monday, cold air overspreads all of the Bering Sea and into Bristol Bay. So look for some wet snow here along the Alaska Peninsula on up into Bristol Bay. That low center drifting eastward and weakening a little bit there into Norton Sound. Northwest winds 45 knots coming into the St. Lawrence Island area there, with snow or numerous snow showers through this area. Band of snow up along and south of the central and western Brooks Range, and the main front crossing the North Slope and pushing a band of snow out to about the entire stretch of the Arctic coast on Monday. Light snow, scattered snow showers here over the eastern interior with areas of clearing, and then the bulk of the moisture coming through tomorrow night. This front moving quite rapidly eastward, so that's when the heaviest snow will come across south central Alaska, and then pushing into the Panhandle. Got small craft warnings and gale warnings in here for the coastal areas of the southeast coast, and more rain, kind of a wave developing on that front, and that's going to roll right up to the northeast and keep conditions wet, keep the rainfall pretty steady there. into Monday night. And looking at temperatures this afternoon along the North Gulf Coast, lower to mid-40s, Valdez up to 46, 35 in Anchorage, 28 at Talkeetna, that same temperature matched at Gulkana, 42 down at Homer, Kenai up to 36, and lower 40s along the North Gulf Coast here, and lower to mid-40s for the Panhandle except the Net, again up to 49 degrees, 20s through the Tanana Valley, and the Northwest Interior, lower to mid-20s out through here, but upper 20s, Kotzebue, Buckland area, teens all along the Arctic coast, although Kaktovik did push up to 21 degrees. Temperatures lower 30s here for Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula, mid to upper 30s for the Southwest coast. And then we had some lower 40s here over Bristol Bay, mid 40s to upper 40s here over the Alaska Peninsula, 50 degrees at Unalaska, and Adak with those near 80-mile-per-hour winds rose up to 54 today for the state's warm location. And for the lows tonight, single numbers here, the Arctic coast, North Slope, right down across the eastern interior into the Copper River Basin with the clearing skies, mid-teens to, or just teens to lower 20s here for south central Alaska, milder along the coast, 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, 40s out over the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, but cooler air spreading in, dropping temperatures into the mid to upper 30s for the western Aleutians. And for tomorrow's highs, pretty chilly up here over the northeast, eastern interior, teens to mid-20s, but south to north winds here pushing warm air all the way up to near 40 degrees there across the south coast of the Seward Peninsula areas, and lower to mid-40s here over the southeast coast. For flying weather, VFR here from the eastern Arctic coast, North Slope, all the way down into the eastern Gulf of Alaska. Southeast coast forecast to become VFR tomorrow afternoon. And then with that front pushing eastward, IFR exiting Kodiak Island here, spreading up to the Kenai Peninsula, and then up along the Alaska Range through there, and then a lot of IFR out here over the northwest interior areas, back through the Bering Strait, and that coming right into the southwest coast and in across the deltas there, and then kind of angling back, but to the north of the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Passes shaping up like this. Anaktuvik, VFR becoming marginal VFR in the southern entrance in the afternoon. Same forecast for Adigan, VFR, but the southern approach becoming marginal late in the day. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out VFR in the morning, and then later in the morning becoming IFR, so conditions are going to drop quite rapidly tomorrow there for the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass included. Windy, though, should stay VFR tomorrow, and Isabel VFR, as well as Mentasta, VFR conditions prevailing there. Tanita will remain VFR also. And for Portage, VFR becoming marginal as some moisture sneaks up here into the eastern entrance. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, well, you can see where the front is quite clearly, right through this area here with the strong southerly winds pulling that 2,000-foot level right up to the Seward Peninsula there, and then back down to Kodiak Island and along the coastal areas, and then big plunge of cold air coming southward, pushing 2,000 feet there south of the western and central Aleutians. Icing possibilities, could be some occasional widespread moderate rime icing here below about 15,000 feet from, say, roughly Kodiak Island northwestward, and then some more here from the Selawik Valley areas into the Chukchi Sea, and then areas of light to isolated moderate rime or mixed icing below about 9,000 feet over much of the Bering Sea. And for the winds, upper level jet stream here showing good westerlies, 100 to 140 knots over the eastern Aleutians, ridging up into the southeast interior, moving eastward there. Still a weak trough here off the southeast coast or right in over the coast, but the bulk of the energy all the way down into the northwest, and that strong upper level low with the strong surface low up over the northern Bering Sea. Looking at the 9,000-foot winds, pretty light over the Panhandle with high pressure moving through, but out here to the west, very strong southwesterlies, 55 to 65 knots there, 50 knots along the coast, and then out over the northern Bering Sea, quite strong winds south to north here, 30 to 50 knots over the western and central interior areas, and much the same pattern at 3,000 feet, that intense storm there southwest of St. Lawrence Island. And again, 70-knot winds coming down the backside of that. Westerlies 50 to 65 knots. Again, 50 knots right up to the southwest coast. South to north flow here, 35 to 45 or 50 knots. 20 to 25 knots here over the eastern interior. And for turbulence, could be severe here along the southwest coast of Nunivak Island, down to the Pribilofs, up in towards St. Matthew Island, mostly below about 4,000 to 5,000 feet. Another batch up here over the northwest interior, especially for small aircraft. Otherwise, in the turquoise shaded area, occasional widespread moderate, mostly below about 7,000 feet. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
10 to 10 cars, COL, possible OUIL. Westbound Hall, approaching Grossbeck. Light brown Pontiac, plate of Sam 497, all over the roadway. Comes back to an 87 Pontiac out of Clinton Township.
K9 1 testing 10, 161. 310. Where was that vehicle coming from? We're 21 and north right now.
Westbound Hall, approaching Grossbeck.
Is there a problem, officer?
Sir, do you know how fast you were going back there?
Oh, not exactly, around 60, 70 knots.
Okay, well, I clocked you at 70 knots in a 60-knot zone. That's more than 1.5 times stalling speed.
Gee, I didn't realize I was going that fast.
Do you know how much of the runway you used?
Oh, half, maybe 2/3.
Also, it looked like you were weaving coming down the center line on your final approach.
Well, I guess it was a little bit more crosswind than what I thought.
Do you know what the crosswind velocity of this airplane is?
About 12 knots.
About 12 knots. All right. Well, sir, it says here that you've been cited for excessive speed on rotation, improper trim on takeoff, and failure to comply with noise abatement procedures.
Oh, they dropped the noise abatement charges.
All right. Well, sir, what I'd like you to do is go ahead, tilt your head back, touch your fingertips to your nose, and tell me what VASI stands for.
Visual Airborne Systems Information.
Well, that's a nice try. That's 1 out of 4. You know what this means.
You gonna give me a ticket?
Yes, I am. It's going to be to a takeoff and landing clinic. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Imagine if there really were runway police. Hi, I'm Harry Chase, and I can sure remember a landing or two that could have gotten me pulled over. And what about takeoffs? We often overlook them when talk turns to the challenges of aviation. After all, it's hard to collide with the sky, right? We assume as long as we're leaving the ground instead of returning to it that there's nothing to worry about. But accident data and incident reports say otherwise. 1 out of every 5 aviation accidents occurred during takeoff. The fact is, both takeoffs and landings continue to humble expert pilots and novices alike, and provide material for hours of hangar talk about technique and theory. And during a recent 10-year period, virtually half of all aviation accidents occurred during these 2 brief phases of flight. The better prepared you are, the less chance you'll appear in an accident statistic column. And that's why the Air Safety Foundation created this presentation on takeoffs and landings, the ups and downs of general aviation. Now, takeoffs and landings are part art and part science. The science comes from the physical laws that govern flight, the physics of lift, drag, and thrust, and meteorological phenomena, winds and updrafts and downdrafts that affect an aircraft. The art comes in the ability to use the experience, knowledge, and feel to adjust for the shifting conditions that make every landing and every takeoff unique. What about you? How prepared are you for aviation's ups and downs? When's the last time you really practiced takeoffs and landings? And when's the last time you practiced in less than ideal wind conditions? What performance parameters do you monitor when you practice them? What is the strongest crosswind you're comfortable landing in? And is it really that cross? Sometimes, after you do the calculation, a 15-knot wind turns out to have only a 6-knot crosswind component. How much do you really know about the takeoff and landing performance of the plane you fly? You have to judge your own answers to the questions. There is no runway traffic cop. It's up to each of us to maintain our proficiency and operate safely. Let's face it, some runways and weather conditions are harder to deal with than others. If your home field has a 5,000-foot runway and the wind never blows, you've reduced the odds of getting into trouble at either end of the flight. But we all use more than one airport, and they all have challenging winds from time to time. No airplane is immune to problems that could create an emergency on takeoff or landing. But surprisingly, the majority of takeoffs and landing accidents aren't caused by wind, weather, density, altitude, or runway length. They're usually due to lack of basic pilot skill, loss of control during these common but critical phases of flight. So, as pilots, we can't take any takeoff or landing for granted. At the same time, we have to be ready to manage the extra challenges encountered at many airports when getting on or off the ground. Obstructions, short fields, soft fields, wind gusts, crosswinds, hot days that effectively shrink the runway length we have to work with. Night operations that rob us of visual clues, or having the sun directly in our eyes at sunrise or sunset. We have techniques and procedures for dealing with all of these situations. Is it our training or lack of exposure that accounts for the fact that only a small percentage of takeoff and landing accidents result from these adverse conditions? So, what about a normal takeoff and landing? You know, another windless day at the airport with the 5,000 feet of pavement. What do we need to consider in a situation like that? Okay, you're ready to take the active runway. There's no wind, no obstructions. You've got lots of pavement to work with, standard temperature and humidity, so what's there to think about? Let's start with the runway. Length is only one of the issues. If there's no wind and the field is non-towered, how do you select which direction to take off in? Would you base it on the direction you were flying, or think about what's lying off the departure ends in case you have to put it on the ground after takeoff? Is there a slope to the runway? That will affect takeoff performance. Some runways are so sloped that pilots always take off downhill regardless of wind conditions. At other airports, you may have to decide if downhill with the wind is safer than uphill into the wind. Are there any rough spots in the runway you can avoid by favoring one side or the other? What about the runway condition? How's the braking action? Has it rained recently? Making it slick? If you have to stop your takeoff roll, that will become a factor. Runway surface condition is a factor cited in an impressive number of takeoff and landing accidents. What about the performance of the plane you're flying? What's the ideal rotation speed? And how do you know when you've reached it? So, as we can see, even a normal takeoff has several factors to take into account. And if you don't have these basics down for a normal takeoff or landing, you won't have the foundation to handle more complex and challenging situations.
Welcome back. West to northwest here, 15 to 20 knots out along the coast. Southerlies at 15, becoming southeast in the afternoon. Light northerly winds at about 10 knots tomorrow morning for northern Lynn Canal, and then those winds will go light in the afternoon, southeast at about 10 for the central and southern inner channels. And for Monday, southwesterlies 30 to 35 knots, strongest on the south coast, more westerly on the north coast. Southerlies 35 knots northern Lynn Canal, and pretty brisk winds, minimum gales there for Clarence Strait. And for the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, southwest 20 knots, small craft advisories here back into the Barren Islands. Kodiak Island southwesterlies at about 30 knots, southeast 30, becoming south in the afternoon, northeast 15 to 20 knots, Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. And for Monday, westerly winds 30 knots here up the east side of Kodiak Island and the Barrens and the North Gulf Coast. Westerlies at 20 knots there for Prince William Sound. Southwest 25 for Shelikof Strait, otherwise 20 to 25 knot winds there from Kamishak Bay right up Cook Inlet. And for the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow, southwest 40 knots, seas 17 to 21 feet with minimum gales right up into Bristol Bay there, westerlies southwest of Kodiak Island. And then for Monday, we've got 35 knot winds here for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, up into Bristol Bay, right out of the west with those seas up to 16 feet there and 21 feet here for the peninsula. Less wind a little bit there and slighter seas, but still running 14 to 16 feet there from Sitkinak all the way out to Cape Sarachev. And for the eastern Aleutians, gales. North of the islands there, strong gale. South of the islands, minimum gales, but gale force winds extending all the way back to Shimi and Attu. And those westerly winds continue with gale warnings from the west central Aleutians across Adak and Atka all the way to the Fox Islands, with seas pretty high, 16 to 21 feet. And for the southwest coast, southwest 45 knots tomorrow, southerlies at 40 for St. Lawrence Island, 50-knot westerlies for the northern Bering Sea here with 24-foot seas, almost a storm for the Pribilofs as well. And then northwesterlies 40 to 45 knots here, St. Lawrence Island on to the south. Westerly winds of 50 knots, north of Nunivak Island, south of the island, west 40. For the Arctic coast, easterlies 20 to 25 knots on the east side, gradually increasing here to 30 knots for the western coast, and easterlies, strong easterlies there, a strong gale at 45 knots for the area from Wales up to Cape Thompson. And then the outlook for Monday, a little bit less, still a gale going on down in this area with small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, brisk wind advisories for the central and eastern coast. And looking at tonight again, we've got showers continuing over the Panhandle, then the big storm developing and moving a little bit to the east-northeast, but the front driving eastward here with precipitation from the Seward Peninsula all the way down, strong gusty winds, 40 to 60 miles an hour with rain for Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula areas. And then that moves eastward tomorrow, so look for the wind and clouds to increase here south central Alaska. Precipitation, mixed precipitation all the way up to the Seward Peninsula areas there with very strong winds, advance of this front, and also coming around the south side of that low center, which is at 952 millibars. And then for Monday, that low tracks into western Norton Sound and weakens a little bit with a lot of snow and snow showers up in that area. Well, that's a look at...
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.